Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Well, I swung by Dale's house early this morning, like 7:45. I had locked myself out last night from the event that was going on here at church. So I called several Unitarians who were not awake at 7:45, or I didn't dare go by their house. But Dale, most gracious. I'll make sure to get it. Does everyone have a bulletin this morning? Okay, very good. Well, I was parked at the McDonald's drive-thru this morning, and I looked out at my odometer, and it read 44,444 miles, or 44444. I don't know if that means anything important, but it was an interesting array of numbers when I glanced at it. I'm going to keep an eye out for more fours during the day. Our prelude this morning is Vivaldi's Four Seasons, and this is performed by Nigel in the English Chamber Orchestra. So let us settle into this beautiful autumn day in Bolton, Maine. We're here together to listen to this music, to breathe, to look around in this beautiful sanctuary architectural space, glance at each other as well, if you like, during the song Prelude, Vivaldi. for our moment of centering this morning, I'm going to need Dale's assistance. If you could step to the organ. Randy made a comment in the service last week about, most of all when Dale is playing the organ, you can feel the rumble in the floorboards of the old Unitarian sanctuary, or to feel some reverberation in your body, let alone your ears. So I asked Dale this morning to find a couple of notes on the organ that we could feel the vibration or the frequency of sound, and not just hear it, but to feel it on the old organ. So Dale, we're going to do a group ah. We're going to match the frequency or tone of the sound. I believe, is it an A today, Dale? An A. You do not have to be on pitch to make this work. And you can also harmonize with this. I'm going to keep the group ah going and going to match the organ tone as we combine our group energy and voices and sound this morning. Don't go anywhere, Dale. We'll be singing a hymn in just a moment. We're going to light our chalice. Nicole, would you please assist this morning? We light the chalice today for the vibration of love. Nicole, come back. This is take 2. And again, we light the chalice for the vibration of love. Can you feel it? Since the Middle East has been in the news lately, for opening words, I would like to read a poem from a 14th century poet who lived in Persia, modern-day Iran. His given name was Shah-ud-Din Muhammad. We know him by his pen name, Hafiz, which translates as the memorizer. Apparently, he knew the entire Quran by heart. So this reading comes from out of the book, collection of his poems called I Heard God Laughing, translated by Daniel Ladinsky. This poem is titled You don't have to act crazy anymore. You don't have to act crazy anymore. We all know you are good at that. You can now retire from all the hard work that you do, bringing pain to your sweet eyes and your own heart. Look in a clear mountain mirror. See the beauty. Notice the divine elements you always carried inside of you. The divine element is what infused this universe with sacred life so long ago, and is what joins you eternally with all existence right now. You don't have to act crazy anymore. We should make all spiritual talk simple today. God is trying to sell you something, but you don't want to buy it. And this is why you are suffering. You can't stop your fantastic haggling, your manic screaming over the price. And me, I rarely let the word no escape from my mouth, because it is so plain to my soul that God has shouted, yes, 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 to every luminous instrument in existence. Let us now sing number 10 in our great book, Immortal Love. We will sing all verses, and let us stand as you are able. I brought something in today on the stool down front by the altar. In the service last week, Ira and Rankin talked about the frequency of sound and the healing of sound. And they quoted Nikola Tesla, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy frequency." So they experimented with sound frequency and associated with the color spectrum. So today, I want to bring in another aspect of the science of religion, of energy emitted by matter. So the human body emits roughly 7 to 10 hertz of energy frequency. A common rock, such as this, about 7 hertz of energy frequency. And when it comes to crystals, they'll range anywhere from 432 hertz up to 850 hertz, with clear quartz itself at its highest frequency over 32,000. The exact specific number, and I'm not sure where this comes from, is 32,768 hertz is the specific resonating number. So I've been experimenting, as you know, this past year with rocks and crystals for the first time. So Rankin and I took me on a trip to Stacyville, where there's this amazing shop. You drive by right across the street from the Amish, and it's a huge sign that says, flies, rocks, and jewelry. And you go in, there's this maze of buildings, and it's full of fly-tying material. I've never seen so many flies, and rocks, crystals, and jewelry. So I was looking for a rock specifically from Black Mountain in western Maine. And I found 2 of them. And this is pink tourmaline, which is on the stool. I know you can't really see it too well, but after the service, come down and take a closer look. And I had Randy evaluate it for me to give her assessment, and she gave it a thumbs up. I purchased it and brought it home. And the next day, I went to Presque Isle. There's also a rock crystal shop that many of you know about. Our good friend Jim also assessed the pink tourmaline. Gave it a high rating and said, I have a few other things you need to add to the pink tourmaline. And he suggested rose quartz and a piece of clear quartz. And then he went out back and brought rose petals and spread it across a little mat that he had on his counter. Spread the rose petals, set the pink tourmaline on top, the rose quartz and the clear quartz. Did a blessing, said a few prayers, and this was the arrangement. It's sometimes called a grid, or a rock pile is what I call it. Sometimes they're symmetrically arranged. In this case, or just placed closely together. This would be a rock pile sitting on the stool on top of the rose petals. So, one thing we'll be talking about this year on the science of religion, in the Yogananda book, he talks about 7 energy centers in the human body. And what I've done is just give an easy labeling system to it. E1, E2, E all the way to 7, to identify those 7 locations. Each one has a color and frequencies. So with this particular pink tourmaline, it would be considered the heart center, or E4. And the color associated usually green with the heart center, and pink and rose. So this particular combination is focused on the rose color and on the E4. I've been sitting with this for a week now, experimenting if I can feel anything. I can't hear anything, but there's color and vibration that I'm monitoring. I'm going to keep doing this during the course of the year and report back to you on my research and my findings. And I encourage you during coffee hour to come down and take a closer look. And you can touch it, feel it. It's a 10-pound chunk of tourmaline, so it's got some real heft to it. So that's part of our ongoing experiment this year with sound, energy, and more. Our group reading this morning is number 466. As we continue to explore aspects of religion, our approach to it, how it affects our lifestyle and our decision making. And this is one of the favorite selections in our great book, written by Vincent B. Silliman. I'll read bold if you read the italicized. 466. Let religion be to us life and joy. Let religion be to us a dissatisfaction with things that are, which bids us serve more eagerly the true and the right. Let religion be to us the wonder and lure of that which is only partly known and understood. Let religion be to us security and serenity because of its truth and beauty, and because of the enduring worth and power of the loyalties which it engenders. Let it be to us hope and purpose, and discovering what opportunities to express our best for today's tasks. Religion uniting us with all that is admirable in human beings everywhere. Holding before our eyes the prospect of the better life for humankind, which each may hope to make actual. Nicole's been doing that all morning every time she walks by. Two of the more complicated and philosophical topics of conversation in the world today are theology and golf. People who take golf seriously and people who take theology seriously share a great deal in common. Golf can be very philosophical. Theology can be played like a game. The nuances, complexity, and degree of difficulty associated with both are recognized by golfers and theologizers alike. One of the more memorable services here at UU Holton, here I am still talking about 15 years later, and you may remember this, Karen, was delivered by one of our members who happened to be an avid golfer. He brought in his golf bag and clubs, demonstrated his golf swing, gave us a few golf tips, and then gave a talk titled Zen and the Art of Playing Golf. No windows or light fixtures were damaged during the service. Einstein, when asked if he played golf, replied, "No, I tried it once, but it was too complicated." And when I'm asked, do Unitarian Universalists still do theology? I say, yes, we do, but we do it a little differently than most. Both golf and theology like to use questions and loosely corresponding answers to explore these beguiling topics. For example, a golfer asks his caddy, "Do you think my game is improving?" The caddy responds, "Yes, sir. You missed the ball much closer now." Or, "Do you think I can get there with a 5-iron? Caddy responds, "Eventually." Today we take a look at UU theology, not much about golf. I gave that up years ago. And some of the implications of a recent Article 2 bylaw change and how that helps focus or bring focus to our shared UU values. Several years ago at a UU ministers meeting, the question was asked, what is your one sermon? Out of all the sermons you've delivered, have you noticed a theme that keeps coming up time and time again? Different ways of saying the same thing, variations on a theme. Ministers are known to repeat themselves from time to time, and in this case, it's a good thing. What is your one sermon? So I figured this was going to be great. I had my mental notebook all ready to write down what my esteemed colleagues had to say about their theological process and profound thoughts. Perhaps I could use some of their best material in my sermon, is what I was thinking. One by one, as ministers reflected on their writings and the impact or lack thereof of their sermons, I began to see a pattern. None of us had thought of it in quite this way. What is your one sermon? But soon it became obvious the message we kept returning to over and over again in a variety of creative and life-transforming ways was love. At first, I had to admit I was a bit disappointed. I was hoping for something more profound. But upon further reflection, I realized I was wrong. Each of us, for all of our meandering into philosophical topics, process theology, community building, and calls for social justice, what it all came down to in the end was love. That's where it begins, and that's where it ends. Love. So that brings us to our topic of the day, a look at current UU theology in light of recent Article 2 bylaw changes. I know that sounded a little drab, how I introduced it, but in the bulletin you'll see part of this Article 2 bylaw change, and if this comes from section C-2.2. Under Values and Covenant. It says, as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant or make agreements, congregation to congregation, and through our association to support and assist each other in our ministries. We draw from our heritage of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. And then it comes to our section in the bulletin. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual disciplines of love. So on the altar is a note card. It's the same image that's on front of your bulletin today. And I purchased a box of these. And it's a great design. It's a little more artsy than the image that we used last week. And again, it has the 6 values around the outside, love in the center, and you can see the connecting like leaves and strands and flowers coming out around the edge of each one of these values or principles. So this week I sent out in the support page an excerpt from chapter 5 of our book, Love at the Center. And you'll see the extended excerpt from Reverend Susan Frederick Gray, who was our previous president of the UUA, outgoing, as this year Reverend Sophia Bettencourt came on as the new president for a 6-year term. And one thing that Susan Frederick Gray mentioned, she said there are 2 aspects of the nature of love that are especially important when we consider love at the center of our tradition as Unitarian Universalists. This is her 2-part outline, which I like. The first is the fact that love implies relationship. And the second is that love is expansive and active, both noun and verb. So as we continue our study, we're going to keep these 2 points in mind, that it's relationship-based and it's action-based. It's a theology of love characterized by belongingness or beloved community. That's the relationship part, which was our theme 2 years ago that we developed here on building community and belongingness, and the aspects of how do you buy into that, how do you create a small model locally, and work and develop those relationships, which are always fraught with challenge, sometimes difficulty, trying to find our common and differing views as we work together and envision who we are here in Holton. And the large denomination is struggling with the same effort for that national identity of how do we present ourselves in a world of competing theologies, denominations, secularism, and globally, how do we fit into playing our role as Unitarian Universalists. And the second part, theology of love, is essentially justice-focused action, and it's not necessarily politics or political. You're working through the political process, but primarily it's justice and action, changing our society, small act by small act, as Unitarian Universalists. So those are the 2 pieces that Susan Frederick Gray points out: relationship and social justice and action. One of the members of our Northern Maine cluster of UU ministers is retired minister Mark W. Harris, who was minister at Watertown, Massachusetts for years. And his real specialty is history. And he wrote this brochure 15 years ago, A Background of Unitarian Universalist Origins of Our Historic Faith. It's kind of a crash course in our history, in a pamphlet, very small font, and he autographed the back. This is our historic autographed copy for the archives from Mark Harris. He'll be coming here in November for our ministers' meeting. I'll mention that off the record later. I don't want this on the, I don't want to have offense. He's a really interesting guy, and his connections to Holton will be here in our sanctuary. His wife is also a minister. She'll be coming to the meeting as well. But this traces the history back to the 1st century of competing theologies and where Universalists fit into that historic picture of choice in religion and Unitarian influence back in 1st century. Emerged again during the Reformation and then was exported to the United States into New England in the 18th century. All of that is in here if you want to get into those specifics. Where we're at really is Unitarian Universalist theology in 2024 with this 2-year process of taking a look and reviewing our 7 principles, sources, and purposes. So I've come up with a 2-part theology of where I see it today. Our theology is based on 2 criteria. 1, a theology of love, which this book, Love at the Center, is really focused on. And number 2, theology of truth. Specific theologies about God or no God. All of these dialogues really are secondary considerations. What remains primary, and this new dialogue, new theology, returns the focus to the primary aspects of love and truth. Conversations about God and religion and philosophy are endless and interesting. And as Unitarian Universalists, we explore a full range within our own group of diversity and pluralism, and it comes through in our services, which is hard work to be knowledgeable in that full range. But to keep in mind that this is not the primary part of who we are when it comes to UU theology. It's a return to the center on love and truth. We're a diverse group. There's a wide range of opinion on all of these topics. What we agree on is something else. And that is where our theology has developed today, most recently with these updated bylaw changes or rebranding who we are and what we are about right now, moving into these challenging times ahead for our planet and its peoples. So, number one, the theology of love. Love, and putting it to theological terms, love is God, God is love. They're interchangeable. Or with truth, truth is God, God is truth. They're interchangeable terms. One of the clearest passages in the New Testament comes from 1 John on this theology of love. It comes out of chapter 4, verses 7, 8, and 16, where John says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God lives in them." So I return to that basic, very straightforward affirmation. I think is helpful when theology can get layered, confusing, competitive. As we're trying to explain who we are as UU members, keeping it on track or on the focus of love, I think, is helpful. Indicators that you're on the right track are life-affirming, nonviolent, equanimity, or great sense of peace as you're operating with that approach to God as love, inclusionary. And then those indicators are important to just keep in mind and to notice. Where you will find God, or affirmation or validation of God's activity, presence, or action would be those qualities and characteristics of love and truth. On the second part, God is truth. Truth is non-conflictive. It cannot contradict itself. What is true is true. If it does, it only appears to do so, to contradict itself. By looking deeper and going deeper, and you'll find that it doesn't contradict. You will find what is true. You are now in that world of paradox and apparent reflections. But what is true is true. I want to read one more poem from Hafiz, where he talks about the limitations of talking about theology. And this is titled, "Someone Should Start Laughing." I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, how are you? I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, what is God? if you think that the truth can be known from words, if you think that the sun and the ocean can pass through that tiny opening called your mouth, oh, someone should start laughing. Someone should start wildly laughing right now. Humorist philosopher Greg Eisenberg, who's the author of Letting Go Is All We Have to Hang On To, had this to say about the limitations of using language to communicate the most profound ideas. Lao Tzu, author of the Tao Te Ching, once said, "The truth that can be spoken of is not the eternal or deepest truth," which is probably explains why he was so quiet at parties. So we need to talk about theologies. And I am prone to do that at length in conversations over a cup of coffee, and to explore and ask questions, and to get feedback, and exposure to new ideas, and developing trends involving what science has introduced that has implications for our understanding of how we even define God. Oftentimes these days, the language of science and the language of theology are coming closer together, talking about consciousness, or with psychology, talking about the dynamic of loving relationships and the emotions associated when you're on that right track. All explorations of truth, the divine. It can be personalized God or non-personalized. These are all different ways to approach and experience love and what is true. In closing, I would like to read from the latest issue of World Magazine. And this is, again, from a president's editorial column, Reverend Dr. Sophia Bettenbrock. She's also the editor of Love at the Center, which is our study book for this year. She says, today's Unitarian Universalism asks profound questions about our shared values, how we engage one another in accountable and justice-seeking ways, how to best steward our theological inheritance, and how to continue the practices of communal care that expanded with such a wonderful embrace during the quarantine stages of the pandemic. How are we called to set aside much of what we have known for long enough to not only imagine new ways of being, but to catalyze the work that such inventiveness requires? How do we best live into our role as carriers of a flame that burns with conviction, a flame that strengthens us to carry forward opportunities whose hopeful possibilities give us courage for the days ahead? In these tenuous yet re-emergent days, let us risk showing up fully for the values that love requires. My ask is that you consider holding Unitarian Universalism with me in love and hope. I know that these months have also been a time of wrestling with our values as we live in a world shaped by violence, war, and idolatries of hatred, so painfully on display in the Middle East currently. Not only is it ours to promote justice through our actions, it too is ours to model generosity, equity, and interdependence through the ways that we build collective power and community. Living faithfully when the path forward is unknown asks something of us that I don't fully know how to put into words. I know what it feels like. I feel it in the quietude of worship, in our deepest expressions of the human spirit, and in our yearning for community and the world we imagine. And I know that the movement is easier when we are moving together. as we extinguish the chalice, may the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. So may it be.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you'd like to show your support, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, and help us out by sharing this message by clicking the share button. If you'd like to make a monetary donation to the UU Church Holton, there is a link to our online donations in the video description down below. And again, thank you so much and have a blessed day.